Carmel Mountain Road is a disgrace. This was fantastic when I read this. So I live in Poway, and our local newspaper is the Poway Chieftain, and it's run by an organization called Pomerado News. And they were purchased by the San Diego Union Tribune. So it's good, reasonably good local news coverage, and they have a letters to the editor section. And there was a letter there from a gentleman named Joe Calabrese, and Joe was a former city council candidate in Poway a number of election cycles ago. But he said that Carmel Mountain Road is a disaster, and he's right. I mean, have you ever driven on Carmel Mountain Road on the east side of the 15? Right there by Home Depot, by Costco, by In-N-Out Burger. I mean, up and down that road, the asphalt there is just a charred mess. It's just terrible. And so he wrote this letter initially just ripping council member Marni von Wilpert, saying that she's really not doing anything to address this problem. He's saying that Carmel Mountain Road is a safety hazard. And there's potholes all over the place. I mean, it is like kind of dodging, like it's like the game Frogger, when you're trying to cross the street. When you're driving on Carmel Mountain Road, you've got to really pay attention to the quality of the road because it's tricky. And there's all kinds of undulations with the pavement that have been really just ruined by a lot of the weather conditions over the years. So here's just a couple of lines from Joe's letter to the editor, which I thought were great. He said, the San Diego Office of Risk Management has named Carmel Mountain Road the fourth worst road in the city in terms of claims for vehicle and personal injury. Claremont Mesa Boulevard, Balboa Avenue, and Torrey Pines Road lead the list. So yeah, it's awful. And then he this is a great one too. He wrote a letter to Marni von Wilpert expressing his concern, and he got a well-written response from one of her staff members letting him know that they were aware of the situation and it was being handled as best as possible, despite budgetary concerns. But then they went on to comment that Bernardo Heights Parkway, which is right there, kind of like a little bit away from Carmel Mountain Road. If you've ever been up on that road, Carmel Heights Parkway, which really had no imperfections at all or very little, has recently been repaved. So they're repaving roads that really don't need it and leaving roads that need to be fixed unattended, deteriorating, crumbling, pothole ridden up and down Carmel Mountain Road. So Joe Calabrese tries to set up a meeting with Marni von Wilpert to discuss it. And he reached out to her in July of this year. They said, well, just contact us later on in the year. I think it was in September. And then she would be available to meet. So he goes back and reaches out to her staff. And they say, I'm sorry, we're not taking any meetings now. They're not taking meetings from the citizens that Marni von Wilpert represents. We hear all this national conversation about democracy falling apart, democracy unwinding, the destruction of democracy. Well, here at the local level, we have elected city council members that are not taking meetings with their constituents to talk about one of the most fundamental, most basic things that a city government does, and that is to maintain the streets. This is crazy. There's a lot. I'm a little bit spoiled being in the city of Poway because Poway has really good roads. It's one of the things that our local politicians pride themselves on, and rightfully so. The roads here in Poway are great. They prioritize it. They have a good system to manage the roads. But the minute you cross the city limits and go from Poway to San Diego, you notice it immediately. I remember for the longest time, the Paseo Lucido, which is right along in front of Rancho Bernardo High School, that used to be horrific. And that's actually Carmel Mountain Road, changes its name when it crosses Camino del Norte and becomes Paseo Lucido. And that Paseo Lucido section used to be terrible. And they finally redid that about a year or two ago. And then the road that's Rancho Carmel Road, which goes along the main post office there in Carmel Mountain and then goes down into Sabre Springs. That road traditionally has been horrible, just a disaster. And yet they're not being maintained. So it's like, come on, man. What are you doing? Why aren't these things being taken care of? Considering how much money people are paying in property taxes and sales taxes and all the other funds that really provide revenue to the city government. Why are they not only why are they not taking care and maintaining the infrastructure in San Diego, but why aren't they taking meetings with their constituents? So what a great letter to the editor. I think, Joe Calabrese did a great job, and I'd love to see any follow-up on this story. So if you're watching this, or if anyone knows Joe, please reach out to me if you hear any updates on this. I'd like to find out more. Of course, you can learn more just by going to my website, johnrileyproject.com, and we'll get you involved there.